Today we're going to talk about the relationships between places in the place value chart. We're going to be talking about how, as you move from the right to the left one place, the value of the same digit would be worth 10 times more. What does that mean? Let me break it down and explain it to you. Here we have our place value chart again, starting with the ones period. So in here is the ones place, the tens place, and the hundreds place, like we talked about before. And this is kind of a review because I have talked about this on the other videos. If we put a 1 in the ones place, it's worth 1. If that same digit is moved over to the tens place, it's now worth 10 times what it was when it was in the ones place. Remember me talking about that? So every time we go from the right to the left one place, we increase the value by 10. So if we start here, it's worth 10. If we move the same digit over here, it's now worth 100. So if we look at the number 110, let me show you again what it would look like using place value blocks. There's a 100 block. We put 1 in the hundreds place to represent 100. And we would put 1 tens block to show 10. So together, they're 110. And remember, there's nothing in the ones place. There's a 0, so we don't put any blocks there. Big part of today is to remember that 100 is 10 times 10. So this block is worth 10 of these. And what does that look like? It would look like this. Here's a 100 block, and here's what 10 of those 100 blocks would look like if they were stacked up. 10 of those 10 blocks would look like, and their value would be the same, because 100 equals 100, whether it's one 100 block or 10 10 blocks. So in the number 110, this digit is 10 times bigger than this digit, because it's the same digit. They're both ones. This 1 is not 10 times bigger than 0, because 0 is not worth anything. Okay? They have to be the same digit right next to each other in order for them to be 10 times bigger. Now let's look at the number 44. It's a smaller number. There's nothing in the hundreds place, so I have no hundreds blocks. I have 4 tens blocks to show 40 and 4 ones blocks to show 4. Remember, the 4 and the 4 are the same number. They're right next to each other in places. So that means that 40 is 10 times 4. If I go from the right to the left, it's 10 times bigger. And remember, 40, whether it's 4 10 blocks, or 40, whether it's 41 blocks, is the same. 40 equals 40. How about the number 225? Now we have 2 hundreds blocks, and 2 tens blocks. Notice how the 2 is the same. In the ones place, I don't have a 0. This time I have 5. But we're going to kind of pretend that this 5 is 0. It really doesn't have anything to do with what we're doing today. We're talking about 2 digits right next to each other that are the same, because you will see that 200 is 10 times bigger than 20. Without the place value chart, there's your 200, which is 10 times bigger than 20. Let's try a few problems. Ready? Name the values of the 5s in 559. So write down what this 5 is worth and write down what this 5 is worth. We've done this before, but now we're doing it in the same number, so you should have 2 answers. This 5 is worth 500. This 5 is worth 50. Notice, going from right to left, that 500 is 50 times greater, 10 times greater than 50. Now, what if you were asked to describe the relationship between the values of the 5s in 559? Remember our previous answer? The values were 550. So how would you write down the relationship between them? Give it a try. Pause the video if you need to. Maybe you recognize that 500 is 10 times greater than 50. So describing the relationship between the two fives, you're saying, well, 500 is 10 times greater than 50. That would be a good answer. You might also say that the first 5 is 10 times greater than the second 5. As we look at the number, this is the first 5, this is the second, and the first one is 10 times greater than the second. Or an even better answer, how we talk about getting all those points on tests, you could say something like, the 5 in the hundreds place is 10 times greater than the 5 in the tens place, which tells us even more than this, because you're recognizing just the digit by itself, you're recognizing that the value is 550 even if you don't write them down. It's a very good answer. All right, try again. Name the values of the 8s in 8,826. Remember, we're going to ignore the 2 and the 6. We don't care about them. How would you, what are the two values of the 8s? 8,000, there it is. 800, those are the two values. How would you describe the relationship between the values of the 8s in 8,826? Now, we haven't dealt with thousands before, but it's only one place away from hundreds, which means as I go from right to left, write it down. That 8,000 is 10 times greater than 800, right? And the first 8 is 10 times greater than the second 8, or I should have said, the 8 in the thousands place is 10 times greater than the 8 in the hundreds place. And that's all we're talking about.